Hello. Welcome once again to C9K, the show where we talk about containers, Kubernetes, cloud native cybersecurity, following the trends, WTF's big money, and every show we dive into some kind of new technology that we may or may not understand. My name's Steve Jaguar.
And I'm his co-host, Mike Foster, and Steve will be diving into overlay for tool time. I'm very excited for that. We have an Octo breach, and I have one of the spiciest takes I've had in a while. Welcome to C9K. Yes, C9K, the show that has it all and some screwed up stuff. Some hot takes, some WTFs. Tech CEO going to jail this week. Some crazy news.
Yeah, wait for that one.
Yeah, but before we get into it, we're going to talk about KubeCon. North America. We had sort of 3 highlights that we wanted to get to before we hop into the general news. As always, links are down below if you want to get ahead and read what we're checking out in the YouTube description. Steve and I will be in Chicago in the second week of November. What are you looking forward to?
We're supposed to do 3. I completely forgot about 3.
Yeah, I can put you on the spot because I have 3 off the top of my head.
All right, give me your 3 first, and give me yours to riff off of.
Okay, so there's 3 topics. One, I'm interested to see how much people talk about AI. Second one is Kubernetes is coming up on 10 years. So I'm really interested to see that conversation of what does Kubernetes look like in another 10 years. I know they're doing a big thing in Paris. As a shout out, but I think the conversation is going to start early. And the third thing is just GitOps, AI ops. I feel like there's going to be less conversation about Kubernetes and more about that developer workflow and how that's going to look with AI. So I'm interested to see that. And then for 3 sessions, there is the CTF, the Capture the Flag, Andy Martin and the crew are doing it. I'm interested to see what they change / mix up this year. There's an AI grift talk from Shane from Spotify, I think, which is kind of cool that I want to check out. And then just the general opening remarks from the CNCF. I want to see what new certification they come out with, how much money I have to spend on that to become certified. Yeah.
Is there seriously another one, or are you predicting this?
I'm predicting there's going to be another one. They come out with a new one every year at KubeCon North America.
Okay. I feel there's a hot take in there. Deep, buried.
Yeah. What do you got?
Well, I was curious. I was going to maybe make a bet with you as to how many talks. Now, this is along the lines of what you said, but how many talks say AI? And I'm going to almost bet against myself because although Andy Martin and Control Plane do have the CTF as usual, he submitted a very good talk about AI modeling and security for Kubernetes that did not get in. So what is that? What is that an indicator of? Is that an indicator that every single talk says AI? Or like, I think it supports what you're saying. I think they were so jam-a-lammed with and AI and generative whatever that a talk that is blatantly perfect for the KubeCon got rejected from somebody who wrote a book on it. Didn't get in.
Yeah, there were 2 security talks focused on the AI grift. And I think that they accepted takes on AI that were more realistic, that were focused on everybody's going to try to sell you X about AI. Here's what's realistic in a pipeline, or here's what's realistic in security.
You think they were going anti-hype?
Because they're not supposed to be partner sessions. These are open source sessions, community sessions. And so I think that there's a more realistic take. It's like marketing is going to sell you one thing. Open source community will only support these certain things, and we're only moving in this direction. So I think there's some competing interests there. That being said, when we walk around the booths, I think it would be awesome just to take a photo of like, is there going to be AI on every single booth? And I think the answer is yes. There will
So
be.
you're ruining my number two. One
Ah,
of my favorite things every year, and certainly was my favorite thing in Amsterdam, was to see how large the new company area was, or like the startup section. Because in Amsterdam, there was already, like, I walked into the vendor area and it seemed enormous. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I wonder where are the smaller companies that I can see the emerging tech and the startups that have just got seed funding? Where are they? They're not there. I had to go to a whole other like airplane hangar and wander through just this entire maze of what looked like cheap ass cubicles that you'd have like terrible desks at, some standing only, with just tons of new companies. And even though we're in a recession, it was the biggest thing I'd ever seen. So I'm actually pretty excited to see what happens in just in terms of new technology, because I think that's always a good predictor as to what the following KubeCon will have in its talks. A little hot take perhaps there.
yeah. Okay. Do you have a third?
My anti is that I used to love it when there was the open source security. What's it called now? It's not what there used to be a security day zero
We call
and
it.
a day.
Yeah.
It's not there.
No, it's in June next year in Seattle, I want to say, or it's in a different area. Yeah. I think just security had so much money. They're like, let's spin it off and do our own event.
Well,
And
they did it. Yeah, they did it in February this year.
yeah.
And I used to like when it just was a precursor, because it was my favorite part of KubeCon, mainly because I didn't have any KubeCon duties to do and I could get to go to it. And it's just not there. And it's like, and then even though the cost to go to a day zero event is like a one-off ticket now, and you can go to as many things as you want, which is, I think that's an awesome change,
Yeah.
which I do have. So I'm looking forward to bouncing through day zeros. It just doesn't, my number one thing is it's not there. And I have to wait a year and a half almost for the next one.
Mhm. I am interested to see the Monday to Thursday, how it's going to be different. I think a lot more people will hang around Thursday afternoon and leave on a Friday. So maybe the
Yeah.
Thursday event space, because it's always quiet. I'm interested to see if it's more packed. Anyways, we'll have a follow-up post KubeCon. We'll give you the lay of the land, what happened. We'll show you all our photos of AI on booths in 2 weeks, 3 weeks,
Very cool.
post KubeCon. All right, general news. Cloud native security guy in Europe. Yeah, Michael, man, good call out. All right, the first big announcement: Microsoft is making a app platform play. I think
It is. Throw it in there. There we go. Oh, got to add it to the.
there you go.
There we go. There we go. So you added this. Have you plowed through this? I've read it.
Yeah, so it's always funny because Red Hat being open source, these conversations come up. There's a lot of different people creating app platforms because they want to abstract away Kubernetes. A lot of people do it. Not all people can monetize it and do it effectively, because you need a lot of customer input as to what tools they need. And there's only so many things that you can mix and match. So Google comes out with Autopilot, where it's like, hey, it's going to come with a certain amount of tools and we're going to manage certain things. Microsoft comes out with Radius, this application platform that you can go and drop into all your different Kubernetes services. How long you can support it? What open source tools are you going to pick? If one of those open source tools collapses or changes their license, does that screw up your platform? Right? Like, there's so many things that you're picking from with logistical issues that make it extremely hard to put a app platform on Kubernetes together. So it's going to be an interesting road for Microsoft. This kind of came out of nowhere. We get on calls with them like, hey, we're partners. And then no, kind of not. Do stuff like that. So I was like, interesting move by Microsoft.
I think it's good. There's a lot of discussion we're having internally about the focus on, as opposed to focusing on the destination for the application, including that as part of the application, right? And that looks like the same approach that Microsoft is taking. I got more out of going to the Radius homepage than I did out of that article.
Yeah.
And it says cloud native applications are more than just Kubernetes is the first thing it said. And I was just like, okay, I already feel like I understand more about Radius than I did throughout that entire article. And it's more of an ecosystem driven look at applications. And I'd be really curious to see, oh good, you switched over, is this idea that you have an application that's traveling probably through a very Microsoft centric organization. People who use Microsoft tend to like completely buy into the Microsoft world, right?
Yep.
They use Azure DevOps, and that's all they do. They write everything in C#. Sorry. And if that's the case, and they're using something like ARM templates and all that, then the ability for them to create this application graph and show full connectivity is pretty cool. Like, yep. I think it's interesting. They did drop a little AWS logo, like as in, look, it's not just Azure. We can do it for everything. So I thought cloud neutral existing tools, like it's depending on its level of maturity before release. I think it's pretty strong. I don't know. I'm also, of course, curious to see how well they bake security into what it all is.
Yeah.
Or whether we wait a year and then suddenly they're adding a security platform into this as well and trying to compete with like bigger players in the industry as well. So that'd be interesting.
This feels like Azure Arc didn't really take off the way that they wanted it to. And so they want to package something smaller and then pull some workloads away from AWS because that's the big heavy hitter in the world, where it's like, hey, we have an app platform that you can run on EKS because we know EKS sucks a little bit. And then we can move some workloads over to Azure slowly. That's what it feels like to me.
Ooh, I like that. All right.
On to the next one. We have, normally this goes in the WTF, but this was such big news, so we had to bring it up.
Yeah. Okta's support system breach exposes customer data to identified threat actors. One of the big victims of this was Cloudflare.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fascinating. How many? It's like there is something down there that says only. I like the caveat. Only 1% of our customers were affected, and then you see how many customers they had, and you're like, it's still a lot of customers. Actually,
yeah, it's a lot. I actually got an email or a notification from 1Password because none of the data was breached, but I guess somebody checked in as a user or like a developer on their host, and they managed to isolate it and remove it quickly. But I think using Okta, they were able to gain access.
Right.
So
it says like that's interesting. The one from Cloudflare, I just kind of went to try and find it here. So the threat actor was able to hijack a session token from a support ticket. That's super cool, right? I mean, that's not, but it's interesting that was how the breach happened. And it was created by a Cloudflare employee. So suddenly you've got a session ticket from a Cloudflare employee extracted from Okta, and then you can access Cloudflare. Like, oh, interesting. So it is a system level attack, and this is probably one of the few instances where somebody claims it was a sophisticated attack, as people who get breached always say. It actually does sound pretty sophisticated. So
a dapper attack, one might say. Little bow tie, sophisticated.
Very good.
All right.
So yeah, if you're using Okta, freaking out.
Watch out. You might be that 1%.
You might be, yeah.
The one time you don't want to be associated with the 1%ers. Not a sophisticated 1%er.
Yeah.
All right. On the vulnerability management, things you should know about EPSS. I want a hot take from you. What do you got?
It's not very hot. I quite like EPSS. I mean, people have been criticizing CVSS, the common vulnerability scoring system for ages. I don't criticize CVSS. I mean, it's got a set of very simple markers, like is it network accessible, et cetera, and that all accumulate very simple calculation as to how bad it might be. Nothing to do whether it's reachability, exploitability. None of it's there. I don't really think it's its job. I like the idea that the exploit predicting scoring system, that's cool, because if you're using what do you want to call it? Why am I blanking on the type of data that is out there in the wild that affects whether something might be exploitable? CloudSploit uses it all the time. I'm sorry, CloudStrike,
like KEV, known exploitability.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm blanking. Michael Mann's watching. Michael, help us out here. You know, with
It's a Friday. We'll let you go.
industry indicators that show
Yeah.
things are bad. I like the hand wavy explanation here. Spits out a probability of a CVE being exploited in the wild within 30 days, if you're wondering when that's what it is. I do like they have blue keep, right? CVE, a 2019 CVE, and they're saying 97.5% chance of it being exploited in the wild within the next 30 days. However, if you break that down, it's a 4-year-old exploit. If you push something out, a dependency that is facing the outside world that has a 4-year-old vulnerability in it, yeah, there's probably 10,000 exploits published out there. So it's going to have a super high score. The most interesting thing I found about this article after all the fuss is going all the way down to the bottom where they had log4j as a graph as to how it changed. It's really far down. Now, I apologize if this is hard to read on fuzzy YouTube, but I can run through it really fast. Like when it was first released on December 11th, they gave it a 35% chance of exploit. Log4j, right? You know, it's super easy to exploit. I use it in the CTF that we do. It's not super easy, but it's easy. And then you get the next day, there is a different reference. It goes up a bit, it goes down a bit, it goes up a bit, and then boom, it pops up here because exploit DB suddenly had 25 references to it. So there's some kind of modeling and observability that's going on amongst industry sources that is changing these numbers over just a few days. And then you move forward and suddenly Metasploit adds a module and it goes into the 90%. Metasploit for some reason removes a module, and then it goes down to 60, and then somewhere in January adds it back in, January 12th, and boom, we're back up to like 99% exploitable.
That's got to be a pain in the ass for a security person to see that fluctuation, right? And if you don't have insight into it, I feel like as long as EPSS is paired with other information, then it becomes more useful, right? If you have vulnerabilities along with the time it's in the image or the time of the exploit, along with EPSS scores, then you can get a better take on it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's quite immature. I mean, adding this into your product at the moment would be, I think, innovative, but you need like a little grain of salt icon next to it or something.
Yeah.
Because
a lot of caution.
Like the designers of EPSS and the people who are creating the models are already saying it kind of works. And there's a good analogy in here where it talks about the weather. It's like, how often is the weather prediction right? And it's like, but you still rely on it. And so it's like right now, in terms of accuracy, it's a little like looking at the weather report. Oof. And I'm like, I don't know, what country are you in? England? It's not so good here.
Yeah.
But I like that analogy because it's like, yes, sometimes they're going to get things wrong, but I think it's actually kind of better than nothing. I think I would like to have the information rather than not have it.
Yeah,
I like EPSS.
I've heard of a couple people piecing together these different feeds into a graph/tool because they can't trust one security tool, and so they're trying to bring it all together so they get a fuller picture. Speaking of over-solving for things, this next article might be one of those situations. You found this one, I believe, right? Have you gone through it?
I have gone through it with a bit of a fine-tooth comb. I remember it was the last season or the season before when the OpenSSFs first appeared, and we were both like, who are these people?
And how'd they get funding?
How'd they get funding? What is going on? And they had new things all the time. And now I kind of like, oh, okay, they're doing a lot of really cool things. And then this came out, a specification for Security Insights 1.0. And first of all, got to respect the leap to 1.0.
Good for them.
Yep, they committed to it. But I kind of went through, and I usually expect the very first paragraph to tell me the problem. Not just say we're thrilled to announce the release of the Security Insights specification, to which I did click through to see what else I could learn. Adoption by projects like Guac, which is, I think I did a little bit of extra clicky. So you can see Guac, the graph for understanding artifact composition. This is something you put me onto, and maybe it should become a tool time so that we understand what on earth is going on down here. And I clicked through to here, the OSSF Security Insights spec. Not a lot of information, a specification file. It just, nowhere does it say, like, okay, the challenge of fragmented information is probably the closest it gets. Critical information, security policies, documentation, other essential details reside in various sources, and now they wanted to create a standard document to address these issues. I didn't know this was a problem.
You want a list of the security processes in a machine processable way.
Right.
Is this an ask from large companies? Because a lot of large companies go and they pull in open source projects and then they format and do specific things. So they want to know, like, what has already been done for this project that is making it more secure. And it's just in the GitHub file.
I guess
there's a reason why it's machine processable, because they want to automate these things. And so it's like, I guess they want big companies to go pull open source, but then know exactly what the maintainers are doing to make sure that it is, like, accepts vulnerability or reports false, right? Like, there's certain things that are called out here. I need to look more into it to see, like, what would a full report look like to be able to compare it. Like, what's a good report? What's a bad report? Does it all vary based on the project? I think that's the questions that I have when I read this article. It's like, what, how is this going to be used?
So this, one of my theories last year, when becoming SLSA compliant became hot and everybody was like, all right, how do I get SLSA 1, 2, 3, 4? Is 4 even possible? Not really. It's about provenance. Well, how do I prove provenance? Well, we don't really know yet, but we're asking for it because you got to be SLSA. And there was a lot of gaps in actually measuring whether you had SLSA compliance. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess if you had a specification for security insights and you had a YAML document that did say, here's the journey, here's the security insights involved in the journey.
Yeah.
Well, then you could have a scanner that scanned the insights, which of course you could game and completely put whatever you want in there. But
in order to be, you can't go and manually check everything in SLSA. And so I think it's one of those first steps to say, hey, we're running all of these things to be compliant in our GitHub or GitLab repository, which is the first step of being SLSA compliant. And then, you'll do something else in the pipeline, you'll do something else at runtime. But at the end, if you're going to become SLSA compliant, you need everything to be machine processable throughout that process, right?
And I that's my guess, is that this is another step. Like, SLSA opened up so many holes into provability of process. Maybe it looks a little like an SBOM for actual software development process as opposed to software composition itself. So interesting.
We have to bring the developers on. If you're watching, which I doubt you are, please come on and demo it for us.
Please
would love
show us what it means and how it fits into my world. That would be awesome.
All right, last thing in general news before I have an extremely spicy take. A tech CEO got sentenced? What?
Yeah.
So
check this out.
We saw this headline and I'm like, a tech CEO sentenced to 5 years in IP address scheme. And you're like, that's a tech CEO? I thought that was a magician.
Yeah.
Vital stats.
Let's not judge a book by its cover, but if I were to.
And I know what you're saying, like, tech CEOs don't, or CISOs don't go to jail. They don't get anything into any issues. This is less of a tech CEO and more of a money laundering fraud situation.
Yeah.
So somebody was sitting on IPs, created a bunch of shell companies, and then sold the IPs to the other shell companies and basically was moving money back and forth and paying himself in order to move money around.
Yeah. So that's probably a little bit relieving to all of the tech CEOs watching our show, or who are thinking, oh my goodness,
you are safe.
Yeah. Are you the tech CEO of a fake tech company? Might have a problem.
Yeah. All right. Hot take time. My most controversial hot take. If you are anti-exploitability of open source, you should be pro business source license. Tell me why I'm wrong in the comments. But hear me out. Amazon, big companies, take open source projects, say bastardize them, or take them for whatever their uses are. They don't contribute back, and then they go and sell and take advantage of the open source contributions. With BSL, those big companies couldn't do it. So if you are pro open source, but you don't like those big companies taking the projects and turning them into whatever they want in the cloud and then making money off them, you should be pro BSL. I'm not advocating for BSL. I'm just saying you should be pro BSL. That's my hot take. Tell me why I'm wrong.
That is going to be the first time that we cut that little bit you did in 15 seconds.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it pithy.
Throw it out there as a short so you can get some YouTube abuse.
Yeah, exactly. All right, this week in WTF, and off the back of that crazy take, I don't know who the hell's take that was. We have a little BSL controversy.
Straight into another hot take. Look at that.
HashiCorp CEO predicts open source free Silicon Valley unless the open source model evolves. And then it says the Linux Foundation's open tofu adoption is tragic.
Oh, that is spicy. Well done.
Yes.
By the way, that's what a real CEO looks like.
Yeah. No more open source companies in Silicon Valley. I do think there is some merit to what he's saying, where business and venture capitalists are looking at the open source model and saying, if the big companies are just going to take open source, like the Googles and Amazons of the world, and productize it quicker than we can turn around and sell it to them, then that model falls away, right? Like there is a specific window where you can take an open source company and actually monetize it to a bigger company. But if that goes away, then the model falls away. At least the startup open source model falls away. I think that there's a big distinction there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think there's a part of, I think it's a bit of an extreme take, but it serves his purpose to get attention and headlines so that he can stand on the soapbox about why they did what they did. I don't know that open tofu is necessarily tragic, but it's inevitable. But it'll be interesting to see where we are this time next year in terms of, whether he eats his words or whether, I think open source is always going to be there. And I think startups certainly thrive on it.
Of course.
Yeah.
It makes you move extremely fast. The question is how fast do the bigger companies consume that model, consume that open source project? I do think that open tofu, as much as it is an open source model and a lot of contribution from different people, is funded by competitors as well. So there's a little bit of how much is people wanting to just keep Terraform alive, and then how much of it is competitors that have consumed Terraform and now use it, and it's mandatory in their business model and their tech, then don't want to see it die. So I think there's definitely, it's not all sunshine and rainbows under the hood between these two projects and companies.
Yeah. When you say competitors, there's also, it's just a bit of survival in there too, right?
For sure. So somebody was going to keep the Terraform project alive once the BSL came out, the same way Elastic did it with Amazon, right? It's going to happen. It's just, I have a more cynical take on it, let's say. A hot take for another week.
Okay. Awesome. All right.
And then I think we're getting rid of false positives now.
I didn't understand this. I mean, I when I think false positives, I think one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest associations with the phrase false positive is straight up static analysis, which is analyzing your code, interpreting bad source to sync in terms of security, or interpreting lack of input sanitization, or just bad practice in terms of code quality generally. And then you find out, oh no, it's wrong because it misinterpreted. Its compiler didn't do a good job. But they're actually talking about like Gripe. If you don't know Gripe's like an SCA tool. I can pop over to Gripe, assuming this will jump to it. There we go. Vulnerability scanner. A free vulnerability scanner for SCA, works with SIF to generate SBOMs, blah, blah, blah. Lovely logo. I don't know that I thought, like, SCA is noisy, but I didn't necessarily feel that there was a massive false positive issue out there. Like, is this a thing that you hear from
I think
either
this is
internally or
mostly
customers?
about vulnerability scanning and
Yeah.
matching CPEs against like what the scanner is pulling up. So if you have a bunch of different vulnerability feeds and I scan the product and one of the feeds highlights and the text just matches, it might say you have this vulnerability because you have this one package and this one vulnerability feed is showing this. That doesn't necessarily mean you have a vulnerability, right? It's just that we've noticed that it matches up. And so people go through and they're like, no, this actually isn't relevant to our product. I don't know why this got flagged. So I think it's just more of, if you can predict that and get something where it's not just doing almost like a regex and matching, hey, vulnerability with package, you get something that's a little bit tighter.
Got it. Smarter package matching makes sense.
I'm just curious why, if that's the case, why are they the first people to do this?
I don't think they are.
Yeah, I think a lot of
I
different
think
scanners build this sort of functionality in.
Yeah, I think the major commercial scanners do this already. Like I would bet money that Sneak do this already. I'm absolutely positive we do this internally.
Yeah,
already. And I feel like Aqua did it already as well. So it's I think might be more a case that Gripe's free.
yeah.
So that's awesome for a free tool.
Mm-hmm. One of the other interesting things is they've been able to reduce false positives by 2,000 on the test data set while only seeing 11 false negatives. Veracode does. Nice.
Yeah.
And the false negatives, I think, is very interesting when I talk to security personnel, because they'll use multiple scanners in order to see what one picks up that doesn't, because they'll take the 2,000 false positives over, and they don't want to lose like the 11 false negatives.
Oh yeah. That's
like they'd rather sort through all that stuff instead of letting something slip through.
Understood completely. Yeah, that's true.
But anyways, I just thought saying goodbye to false positives, like they're just going to be gone. Oh my gosh.
Bye. And of all types. Yes. Again, another like, what a headline grabber, right? It worked.
Yeah. And the picture is see you later. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. A fish.
Very cool though. I think we should check out Gripe in a future tool time.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right. Tune in soon. All right. Next on the WTF, cloud vulnerabilities surged 200% in a year.
Yeah.
Now, they rounded up. It was 194, but 200 just looks so much better in a headline.
Yeah, let me zoom in on this. Otherwise, it's unreadable. There you go. IBM. Hey, that's you.
Yeah. Our X-Force.
Yeah, I like that.
X-Force Cloud Threat Landscape Report. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Firms threat intelligence, incident response engagements, and pen tests along dark web analysis. So is this a report that we can go get, I assume?
Yeah, you probably have to put an email in and talk to an IBM associate after, but you can get the report.
That's true. You should be able to get it without having to sell your soul.
IBM and Red Hat.
So like, do they? So it's a pretty short article thrown out there. What do you think? If this is true, why is there 200% more cloud vulnerabilities?
I don't know. Maybe they're all false positives. Maybe we need to get Gripe in here.
Hey.
Yeah, I just think the cloud and its services are getting infinitely bigger and scaling extremely quickly. So I also think just the sheer amount of code that's being generated, you're going to see things like this. Is a vulnerability. I think we're also getting more aware of our vulnerabilities and the certain issues. And so the more we scan these things, the more that we're looking at all the different services, we're like, holy shit, like we missed a bunch of products that actually have vulnerabilities baked in. I think that there's an aspect to that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I had a conversation recently with Mackenzie Jackson. He's, Mackenzie, he's like the advocate at GitGuardian. Mm-hmm. He was talking about because they do this whole state of secrets report that they do. And they had a number like this as well, where it was like they found a gazillion more public secrets on GitHub this year over last year. And I was like, okay, why? And he's just like, well, like two main factors really. More. There's just more to scan. There's more cloud. There's more people moving in that direction. There's just more things that can go wrong. There's more cloud services. If there's more ways that people can do cloud services wrong in combination with each other, et cetera. He goes, potentially better is that the tools you can use to scan for vulnerabilities are way better this year than they were last year. Because the two biggest factors, combine those together, there's no way the number's going down. So it's you're not comparing apples with apples when you throw numbers out there. Like, unless you use the exact same tools and versions you used last year and scanned only the clouds and cloud resources you scanned last year, where you get an actual comparable number.
Yeah.
So
I feel bad for security teams. Like, let's say you're moving to Kubernetes, you get a Kubernetes security tool. It shows you 1,000 vulnerabilities. But then as you're shrinking the vulnerabilities on 3 teams, new teams are getting onboarded every month or week, year, whatever it is. And those vulnerability numbers are just going to keep going up. And then the CISO comes and says, why are there more vulnerabilities? Well, you just moved all of our services to Kubernetes.
More stuff.
We had a third of it last year. It's not my problem.
Yeah.
So I feel for the security teams out there.
The struggle is real.
The struggle is real. All right. To the consistently inconsistent response to access key leaks.
I just thought this was, have you read this one? Because it's, okay, Chris Ferris, he runs Open the Forward CloudSec with Scott Piper.
Okay.
And so he's a pretty fun guy generally, but I love what this is like a personal research. And I like this. So I did it again, proving I'm the most incompetent security hero ever. I committed 8 different access keys to a public GitHub repository for 8 different AWS accounts, and then waited to see what would happen, and was amazed by the consistently inconsistent response of AWS support.
Okay, let's see.
I love articles. I love articles like this, because he's pushing different secrets, incident response class. I guess he said he did this because he was teaching at B-Sides as part of the class. But yeah, I'm not going to go through all of them. Like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on here.
It's a cool article. It seems like he has a personality and a location for each secret that he uploaded.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So do check this out. Knowing this is a good reason to go down to the links and read a very entertaining article by a very entertaining person that did some very entertaining research in terms of looking at the reaction to doing the wrong thing. It might even be, there probably is some good takeaways. Actually, it's a good point. I didn't go all the way to the bottom to see what the takeaway actually is. Like, what, rather than relying on the consistent inconsistency, what should you do to make sure that if you do this yourself by accident, what are you doing to make sure you aren't accidentally publishing AWS access keys? Because I mean, I just mentioned GitGuardian, great example. Tools that will make sure you never have this experiment, allow this experiment to happen in the first place, because it's just too easy to make it happen. And what happens if you rely on it? So I just think it's a very funny article. Chris Ferris, title, Cloud Security Guy.
Very, very cool. And then I think we have 2 more in the WTF. Cisco, massive zero-day exploit. This normally goes in CVEs, but we can't really put it there, right? This is just a WTF by.
Yeah, greater than 10,000 network devices backdoored through an unpatched 0-day. A threat actor is exploiting the vulnerability. So correct use of 0-day. You added this one.
Yes. I just think greater than 10,000 network devices backdoored. I always wonder, like, what constitute a network device? Are these all servers? Are these edge devices? Like, my phone considered a network device?
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah. So it's a very broad term. Successful exploitation of this vulnerability allows the attacker to create an account on the affected device with privilege level 15 access, granting them full control of Cisco's. I'm assuming a lot of them are Cisco like routers and things like that. It's an Nginx conf, Cisco service conf. Anyways, I just saw this and thought, this is the first time I see it. It wasn't big news, breaking news. But yeah, they're exploiting and creating admin accounts. I'm like, there must be a lot more coming out when you read this, because somebody has admin access to 10,000 devices. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like this paragraph I like because previously unknown vulnerability, hence 0-day, has a 10 it's really tough to get 10. Like
This
9.8, yes, but 10 is almost impossible. 10 means any idiot can exploit this. And even better, it's bad if you can search Shodan and find 80,000 connected devices. Like, that's bad. If it's exploitable and identifiable via Shodan, there's already a script. You've already been compromised.
Cisco is committed to transparency. Yeah, transparency of access to their devices. What? Fingerprinted approximately 10,000 implanted systems, but we've only scanned half of the devices listed on Shodan. So they don't really even know the impact now yet.
No, that's true.
Crazy, crazy stuff.
It's probably worth noting what up here, the internet-facing iOS XE systems. This doesn't mean it's an Apple device. This is their operating system for.
Mm-hmm.
So don't get confused. That's a Cisco operating system.
Yeah. All right, last one in the WTF. Zero CVEs don't compromise quality for easy compliance. Yeah, get that cookie thing out of there.
I can't get rid of this. It's insisting I subscribe. No way. Actually, I probably already do subscribe to the new stack. Focusing on zero CVEs in your software ignores the fact that CVE management is a lifecycle and management solution and not an end goal. Yeah, I think zero CVEs is stupid.
Yeah, I like to post an article about this every time somebody writes about it, because the more people say this, the better. Literally says, when I kick off my CI/CD process and the vulnerability scanner outputs a 0, my face instinctively draws a smile, but it only takes a few seconds to return to reality. 0 is bad. 0 is like something's wrong with the scanner, right?
Yeah, that's what I think. if I got nothing wrong with it, it's particularly how much software is there, and there's absolutely nothing there, you're like, what's broken? Like, I should break the build if 0 vulnerability shows up.
Yeah, 100%. That should be a massive red flag if that happens.
Yeah, it is funny. I guess there is still like this fallacy that taking vulnerabilities down to 0 is a goal. I mean, I imagine you could probably sort of get there if you decide that we're going to ignore all low mediums.
Don't focus on improving the product at all and just cut down on security flaws.
Yeah, if that's all you did, then that would be you'd be out of business pretty fast. I mean, this could be a good argument for what we talked about the EPSS, because if you're looking to prioritize what you should do, only focus on critical and high, and anything with a EPSS over 70, and then just write off the rest, and then at least you're somewhat on your way to sensibility, certainly far from 0.
Or just only write hello world programs and then pass it through a vulnerability scanner and hope for the best.
Or just start a clothing company.
Yeah.
To get out of software.
Yeah. Speaking of starting companies, let's spend some money.
Well, this not so much spending money on this first one.
Yeah, losing money.
Yeah, this was an interesting SC Media article. Predicting more cybersecurity. That's not even English, is it? Cybersecurity firm closures expected after IronNet shutters.
Yes, the network detection and response company was valued at $1.2 billion when it went public through a special purpose acquisition company in 2021, and has since had to sell off all its assets to pay $35 million owed to creditors. And there's fears of more failures ahead. We will see more of these bankruptcies with highly leveraged cybersecurity companies, even those with unicorn status.
Well, $1.2 billion becomes essentially becomes a unicorn, I suppose. But I guess what was it before? So the idea of a special purpose acquisition, or a SPAC, is a super dangerous way to go public. Like, there was a real weird popularity where it's like a cheat. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like your company hasn't behaved in a way that allows you to IPO. But then you build a company that does, and then you acquire into IPO. It's like I'm trying to do this in a very rough, descriptive way of how a SPAC works,
It's
right?
very, very rough on a Friday. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super rough, but you get the idea. It's not
Yeah.
they didn't really IPO,
Yeah.
and yet they did. And then because the IPO, then it creates a bit of fervor, and the value goes up. But then, good God, are you ever on the chopping block to perform? Because now you have way more money than you would ever have had, and you got to get it done. And I'm amazed any company, and I would say cybersecurity firms that go IPO through SPAC are in big trouble, not just cybersecurity firms.
Fair.
Yeah.
They did call out. So I had a session with Neil McDonald as well. Gardner analyst says 75% of the security buyers that he's talking to are pursuing consolidation of their security vendors, up from 29% in 2020. And I think just the story is doing more with less. There's a lot of unicorns. And if you've built your company on this steady growth through the years and all your projections were based on 2020 to 2021, you can hit some rough waters in the coming years.
Hell yeah. Yep.
But that doesn't stop people from coming out of stealth. You found this one. Gutsy emerges from stealth. Seed round of 51 million.
Yeah, did you see this? 51 million. Remember our friends over at Endor, and we were like 20 million seed. We were like, this is crazy. And it's like, talk about competitive. What's amazing is that Endor was founded by the founder of Redlock, one of the companies that actually began the whole Prisma Cloud saga within Palo Alto. Gutsy is Twistlock.
The Twistlock founders, yeah.
It's Twistlock. It's John Morello and a select few of his Twistlock friends are the founders of Gutsy. And you would have thought it being a very container and Kubernetes and runtime focused company that Twistlock was, there would be some kind of relevance here, right?
Yep.
No, it's not. Security governance, revolutionizing security governance with process mining. And I thought at first I was talking about running processes. No, that's not what it is. It's your security processes.
Yeah, Gutsy is agentless, provided as a software as a solution, and is available globally in any customer selected region. There is a misconception that the single answer to security is technology. So CISOs increase budgets in hopes that tools will equal better defenses. That's a great line.
Yeah,
kind of true. Instead, they end up increasing complexity and spending more money on resources to track down what's broken and why. As a people-first investor, we look forward to the journey with the world-class founding team at Gutsy. Very interesting, because they mentioned it's agentless. Because I was thinking, okay, runtime protection. I'm thinking like eBPF, core BPF, something like that. No, it's agentless. So it's all API and call driven.
Yeah, and it's looking at like combinations of both vulnerability management, IAM policy. It's actual process. It's the interconnectivity of everything, not the processes running.
Okay, this is really interesting though. Look at the founding round, prominent cybersecurity executives and founders, CEO of CrowdStrike, founder of CyberArk, CEO of Wiz. Like, are they just they all know that one of them is going to buy this project, so they just invest, and then they know like they're going to get some money out of it, regardless of if they implement it?
I think that's a good assumption. And also, what they're saying they're doing, I don't know who else is doing it.
Yeah. All right. Well, they have modules. We'll have to check it out, a little free trial or something like that. But we got 10 minutes to get through a CVE and a tool time. Steve, you ready?
All right, let's be quick. Let's be quick. Yep.
Now, what starts with the letter C?
So there's a curl vulnerability that impacted a lot of systems. It was disclosed and fixed in all of the new operating systems. This affected, SUSE. Most Linux distributions that had curl in them were affected. So just make sure that you're updating any of your Linux VMs to the newest version and run a scanner, because it's one of the worst curl security flaws in a long time.
Yeah. So what was I didn't catch the anatomy of the issue. Maybe that's best I don't know.
Yeah, I believe it had something to do with like you could pass like a certificate, or like the certificate authentication was broken when you curled something.
Yeah, it was something to do with the programmatic use of libcurl, though, wasn't it? It wasn't like curl, command line curl. I guess the word is upgrade your curl.
Yeah. Even Sneak's reporting on it. The update was October 11th. Heat-based buffer overflow that could impact systems with a specific configuration and preconditions.
Okay. Meaning complicated, but exploitable.
Yeah. It's high.
Sense. Yeah. So there's probably an exploit out there. So there you go. Upgrade your curl.
Yeah, and the open source community was pretty quick on this. This was disclosed across the ecosystem, and most people have implemented the fix. Yeah. Are you ready, Steve?
I am now.
Does everybody know what time it is?
Okay, so we've been talking about overlay. I think we brought it up on a previous show, and Steve willingly sacrificed himself to be the guinea pig.
Yeah. So throw my screen up there. So the first thing that, before I even get an overlay, this is created by the Open Source Supply Chain Attack Research Repository. Never heard of it, but I'm kind of happy. So I guess it's this collaborative group, a lot of names in here. None of our people, but we probably should be involved in it.
Like Cider in there,
Ox and Sneak, and oh yeah. So technically we're in there through Cider. So I'll probably talk to some of them about what's going on. Seems very, I don't want to say, a lot of companies based in Israel basically have created this, and the idea behind it is that it is a browser extension that you can add that gives you a heads up before, like it's like super shift left. The shift left, people think, oh, we'll put in the pipeline. No, put it in the IDE so that when I add it to my package.json, it will scan and tell me it's bad. Pardon me, didn't you hear that? Getting over a cold, I should tell people that. And now it's like, okay, well, what if I just go visit an NPM or PyPy or Go and see, will it tell me before I even make a decision, this is a bad decision? And I really like this. And the reason I was interested is because I haven't even checked to see if it still exists. Black Duck, now it's synopsis. There we go. Still got the repo. Had a thing called Black Duck Radar. And it's looking like it's not popular, but it was a good idea. And it was a Chrome extension to display component information, operational risk, vulnerabilities, etc. Same concept, essentially. And hey, look at the contributors. There's me.
Look at you.
Yeah, how about that? So hence my interest in this new one, which I thought, oh, this does the same thing. Very cool. Already exists, is in the Chrome store. Now, I've already tested this. The biggest problem you're going to have if you go here is that it just won't let you install it, because look how new. It's got like one review, probably by the developer himself. And it's going to give you some effortless insights. Now, I trust the source.
Yeah.
So I'm going to add the extension. And it's pretty much that's all.
Okay.
The significant difference between this and Black Duck's, I'm going to bring it up, overlay. And you hover over it or click it. It says, all right, what do you want? What do you want your sources to be? I know it's really hard to read, and I tried to make it bigger, and it doesn't make it bigger. It says, do you want debricked, deps dev for dependencies, and Sneak's feed?
Okay.
And you can actually go back. I think when I go back to the repo, it tells you it's using Sneak Advisor, debricked, socket dev, and deps dev to get its information. So I thought, okay, great. You can go to tests. And you could say, well, where can I go that would make it fire, right?
Okay.
It took a little while.
Yeah.
Before I could go to real examples, fetched in YAML to try and figure out what can I do. And I was amazed at this. This was actually pretty neat. Let's see if it works.
Oh, a Stack Overflow suggestion that was like a hack?
Yeah, like if somebody says getting started with Node.js and one of the answers is offering, where is the answer? Offers something like Lodash or TypeScript or a particular version, it tries to.
Oh, I saw a little red, like scroll down. There's a little red bar around one of the links.
Yeah, that is the problem. You got to go find it.
There it is.
There you go. That's it. So
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of cool. It's got the scorecard. It's got all that stuff.
37 debricked socket. So it gives you this little overlay of insights describing whether it's good or bad or whatever. And I thought,
so I'm guessing it just looks at every single URL link in the HTML, like Chrome in the page, and then just says like, this link is bad, don't click on it, kind of thing. Because it doesn't look at like what somebody wrote. Somebody suggests something. It's looking mostly at links to packages to download, right?
in terms of Stack Overflow, yeah. What did I do? I can get rid of that. Is it over here that I found it? Yeah, real examples. So these were all Stack Overflows, and I was like, really? Well, that's not that useful in terms of all real examples. But it does say it works on NPM. So then I was like, all right, let's go to the actual NPM home, and I guess now I have to think of an NPM package that would be more widely used. How's your NPM?
Terrible.
No, great.
Package list: Express, Async.js, Lodash, Axios,
Lodash.
Karma, Molecular, Grunt.
I'm going to go with Lodash then, because that's hugely popular. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
So see, it built a little
on the install button. So yeah, it's looking at the install links specific to the packages and flagging them. That's how it's doing it, right?
Yeah. So debricked. Okay. Supply chain risk. I think that's a good thing. 98 out of 100. Quality 7 out of 10. And you can like open these up. So say I'm like, oh, I don't understand this one completely. So I can go burn. And it'll take me to the socket page that shows me more about it. There you go. There's my scores up there.
7. Woof.
I didn't like that. But it does mean you have to understand that you're aggregating multiple feeds that may overlap in their opinions into a single sort of opinion. It's a little rough around the edges. Like, it's not the prettiest interface. And one of the things that I like it, like I love the idea of it. It's a little rough. I don't have to get into too many examples. I was surprised that in addition to PyPy NPM, which I could roughly make all those work, I didn't expect it to catch Stack Overflow references. That I think was pretty special. Something Radar never did. My concern or caveat, and if you look at the fact it was interesting that I was there as a Radar, my contributions to Radar were only when it broke. And it breaks because in order for it to have access to the page, hence all of the permissions that you have to grant it to work, if you go through the source code, which I did, it consumes the whole page and is heavily reliant on a deep understanding of the page in a machine consumable format. So if it changes, or they decide to put that install link, or they move the tabs around, or they just, if NPM or anybody decides to change the page layout over time, it will break for that particular. And then someone's got to figure out. So the maintainers of overlay would have to have some kind of way of monitoring their sources to make sure that anytime they see the actual format change, they have to run in and make a change to overlay to make sure that it actually still works.
That's annoying.
Yeah, the maintainability of it is going to probably suffer from the same maintainability issues that Radar did.
Yeah.
Otherwise, though,
there's
I think
also
it's
like
pretty cool.
because of the way it's boxed, could it just not highlight the specific object in the HTML that is the link and then wrap it kind of thing? Where it's
I
like
would think,
if the link is in a certain box and it's bad, like we're going to use that object to then populate our own display kind of thing. So it's automatic, even if it moves.
yeah, I liked the Stack Overflow better than the way NPM built it into the sidebar.
Yeah.
Like just maybe hover and pop.
A little 7, and you're like, oh, what's this red? Oh, okay, don't click this link, right?
Or the way the Radar worked was that the icon in the top corner itself was where if it went red, you just went over and hovered over the icon and it went boom and it popped up there. So it didn't make any change to the page.
Mm-hmm.
So developers, if you happen to be watching this overlay review, do go look at how Radar worked, because it meant you didn't have to manipulate the page or provide overlays in the page or be victim to whatever page manipulation you're trying to do, because generally that's considered a bad practice. Make those tick boxes where you've got where you hover, turn that into the result. And I think that would be a little bit of a friendlier interface. Otherwise, though, I like things that are like crazy shift left and might help. I just think it's going to be a difficult maintenance task and also difficult to get people to use it.
Yes. Agreed. Thanks for the tool time, Steve. We're going to be back in 3 weeks post QCon. We'll wrap it up. We'll show you all the crazy photos. If you're listening to this, please text us if you're going to be there. We'd love to catch up. Until then, I'm Mike Foster. He's Steve Shiger, and we'll see you next time.